Hello everyone, this is Derek Patrick, together with King March Chess Educators. Today's video I figured I would switch it up and start with a tactical puzzle. It's white to move and win. I'll give you about 20 seconds to try and solve it. Okay, the solution is checkmate in 3. Knight e5 check. Black has only one legal move. Rook takes knight. Rook f4 check. Black has only one legal move. King takes f4. And then rook h4 is checkmate. Okay, so the game will also have a double deflection tactic in it. It's a game from the 2009 Chicago Open, and I play black. My opponent is 2100 and he's white, and this was round 8, so it was one of the later rounds, pretty important one to win. Okay, d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, bishop b4. Nimzo Indian. e3, castle, bishop d3, c5, a3. You have two options here. You can either go back or take. I play bishop takes c3 check. B takes c3. After the game I learned that knight c6 is the theoretical move, but at the time I had played queen c7, e4, d6, knight e2, knight b d7, castles. And here I should have played e5 to put pressure on white's center. If he exchanges either that way or that way, it'll look like this. And these are two chronic weaknesses. You don't want to do that positionally as white. If you advance with d5, then black can maneuver his pieces around how the pawn structure is, because those pawns aren't going to move anywhere. You got rid of the dynamic play. But instead, I had played rook e8. f4. So he stops me from playing e5 then. Knight f8, e5, knight 6 to d7. g4. Now I know I'm facing a kingside onslaught. If black does nothing to create counterplay or play on the queen side, say, then white will have a free hand to build up all his pieces and attack black's king at any time he wants. So I play b6, so I want to get my queenside pieces developed. Knight g3, c takes d4, c takes d4. You may ask, why did I undouble white's pawns for him? And you'll see in a couple moves that I open the c-file up. Like I said, I want to create counterplay. I can't just let him set up and attack me. So bishop b7, rook a2, and the computer recommends to play moves like knight g6 or rook a to d8. While those are both fine, I don't prefer those because it doesn't do anything to help stop white from setting up his pieces and attacking me. Instead I play b5. At first this looks really stupid, where you can just take it and be up a pawn. But it takes away him from advancing d5, possibly shutting off my bishop. You know, I don't want him to push any more pawns and pressure me on the center, as well as the king side. Also, after he does take, it opens the c file, and you'll see later on that it helps my pawn structure. So then I play queen b6. He plays rook a to f2. I should mention before that, if black were to move again, I could play queen takes d4 with check. Normally, in this situation, you could play bishop takes h7, putting me in check, and discover winning my queen. But because white's in check, that's not possible. So he plays rook a to f2 to double up his rooks, and now that threat is renewed. Now I can't play queen takes d4. So I play rook a to c8, bishop b2, f6. This is another important pawn move, just like b5, because I want to hinder his rooks that are setting up a battery and this bishop. He plays knight h5, rook c7, e takes f, knight takes f6, knight takes f6, g takes f6. Okay, so a pair of pawns and knights have been exchanged on f6. So I've alleviated some of the pressure. And then he plays d5. Played this move kind of hasty, thinking that he was going to win another pawn on f6. I could take back with this pawn or this bishop, but then he can play bishop takes f6. So I play e5. He immediately captures with f takes e5, and I play d takes e5. Now I have two pawns blocking off his bishop. He has two rooks pointing at this pawn, which is only defended once by my queen, but the problem is he can't take that pawn since his rook is still pinned to his king. And d5 is hanging, so he plays bishop e4 to guard it. I could have played queen takes b5 and gotten my pawn back, but I wanted to attack this pawn first with rook g4, or rook g7. It is guarded by his queen. He plays king h1, so now he's out of that pin, and he is threatening to play rook takes f6. So I develop my knight to guard it with knight d7, and he plays a4. Now I can't take that pawn back. Queen e3. This just threatens to take his bishop on e4 with check. But looking back, I'm not really pleased with this move that I made, because it will allow him to play bishop back to c1, over to h6, attack my rook, and I'm just like helping him attack me again. He plays bishop g2. King h8. And like I said, bishop c1 is the best move here. But instead he plays d6, because he wants to trade off light squared bishops. And I happily obliged. Bishop takes g2 check. Rook takes g2. Rook e to g8. Queen c1. He wants to offer off queens. I decline with queen e4, pinning his rook and attacking this pawn at a4. Again, he should have played queen c2 to cover this and try to exchange queens off. Instead, he attacks my queen in a different way with rook e1. Now I can just play queen takes a4. So I get my pawn back. Queen c6. And rook g4 is what I played, because after rook takes rook, queen takes rook, my knight is guarded. This is actually like the best line he should have went into. He should have traded off these pair of rooks. But instead, he plays rook f2, which makes this game a great ending. Here's the double deflection tactic from the tactic puzzle that I had showed you at the beginning. If you imagine this square D3, if my knight could somehow get here, it would be forking all three of his pieces, which gives it away with knight c5. Now you say, oh, it's just hanging. He can play queen takes knight. This is what he does. There's a really cool variation here where if he plays queen f3, you can play queen e4. Your queen's hanging by two pieces, but he'll still get mated the same way that he does get mated. Okay, so anyways, he plays queen takes knight. So now I've deflected his queen off this long diagonal. So now I can play queen e4 check. He really only has two moves. He can play rook f3. I'll just take the rook and then it's checkmate. Or he takes my queen. Rook takes queen. And now I've deflected his rook off the back rank. And I have a battery with my rooks. And rook g1 is checkmate. Thank you for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this. And there will be more videos to come for King Mars Chess Educators.